There's a well in this story. A deep, dark well where a brother lies dying, abandoned by his own flesh and blood. But that's not the horror. The horror is that he can hear them above, celebrating, laughing, claiming his victories as their own. The horror is knowing that the people who sang you lullabies as a child are now dancing on what they believe is your grave. The Golden Bird isn't a fairy tale. It's a case study in how ordinary people become monsters. It's about what happens when a father's love comes with conditions, when sibling bonds rot from the inside, and when beauty becomes a death sentence for those unfortunate enough to possess it. Tonight, we're not just analyzing a story. We're descending into the psychological hell that the Brothers Grimm created. A world where family is your greatest threat, where kindness is punished with death, and where the only way to survive is to become the monster hunting you. This is Sinister Stories. Subscribe and comment the darkest topic you want us to drag into the light. Let's talk about what the king really is. A man who weaponizes his own children's love for him. Every quest he sends them on isn't about the object he claims to want. It's about testing how much they'll sacrifice to earn his approval, how far they'll go to prove their worth to a father whose love has a price tag. The golden apples aren't stolen, they're bait. The king knows something supernatural is taking them, something powerful enough that his guards won't go near that tree after dark. Yet he sends his sons, one by one, to face this unknown threat. Not because he needs to protect his property, but because he needs to see which son loves him enough to die for him. When the youngest son wounds the golden bird and tracks it through the night, bleeding and desperate, the king doesn't embrace him. He doesn't thank whatever gods kept his child alive. Instead, he sees an opportunity. If his son can wound a magical creature, then surely he can capture it. And if he can capture the bird, why not demand the golden horse? And if the horse, why not the princess who comes with it? Each demand is a test. Each quest is designed to be more impossible than the last. The king is systematically pushing his youngest son toward a breaking point, waiting to see when he'll finally fail, when he'll finally prove himself unworthy of a father's love. This isn't parenting. It's psychological torture dressed up as character building. The tragedy isn't just that the king is willing to sacrifice his sons. It's that the sons have been so thoroughly conditioned that they don't even recognize the abuse. They compete for scraps of affection from a man who views them as investments, as tools to acquire the things his wealth can't buy. They've internalized his value system so completely that they measure their own worth by their ability to bring him treasures. The king creates a system where his children must destroy each other to survive. Only one can be the favorite. Only one can succeed where the others failed. He's engineered a gladiatorial arena disguised as a family, and his sons don't even realize they're fighting to the death for his entertainment. There's a specific moment when the older brothers decide to kill their youngest sibling. It's not spontaneous rage. It's not a heat-of-the-moment decision. It's a calculated choice, made with clear minds and cold hearts after watching him return with everything they failed to achieve. Think about what goes through their minds in that moment. They see their brother riding toward them with the golden bird, the golden horse, and the princess. They see their own failures made flesh, their inadequacy given form. But more than that, they see their future. A future where they're forever the ones who weren't good enough, who couldn't measure up, who disappointed their father. The youngest brother's success doesn't just diminish them in their father's eyes. It erases them. In a world where worth is measured by achievement and love is conditional on success, his triumph is their execution. They're already dead in every way that matters. The murder they're planning is just making the external reality match the internal truth. They wait until he's vulnerable, relaxed, trusting. They let him drink from the well first, let him turn his back to them, let him believe he's safe with family. Then they strike. The push into the well is not just physical violence. It's the culmination of years of resentment, inadequacy, and rage that has been festering in the darkness of their hearts. As their brother falls, what do they feel? Relief? Triumph? Or do they feel the sickening realization that they've crossed a line that can never be uncrossed? That they've murdered not just their brother, but the last innocent part of themselves? The story doesn't tell us. but the silence is more horrifying than any description could be. The worst part isn't the act itself, it's what comes after. They don't run, they don't panic, they don't show remorse. Instead, they calmly take everything their brother earned, construct a lie, and return home to collect their reward. They've planned this thoroughly enough to have a cover story ready. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was premeditated fratricide. Now let's descend into that well with the youngest brother. Let's experience what the story glosses over. The hours, maybe days, of slowly dying in the dark, cold water at the bottom of a stone shaft, where no one will ever find you. He's not dead. Not yet. The fall didn't kill him. It just broke him enough that he can't climb out. So he treads water in the darkness, feeling his strength slowly drain away, knowing that eventually his muscles will give out and he'll slip beneath the surface. This isn't a quick death. It's a prolonged execution where he has plenty of time to think about who put him here. Can you comprehend that level of betrayal? The people who were supposed to protect you, who shared your childhood, who knew every fear and dream you ever had, just threw you away like garbage. They didn't kill you cleanly. They condemned you to die slowly, alone in the dark, with nothing but your thoughts for company. What does he think about in those hours? Does he replay moments from childhood, searching for signs he missed? Does he remember times his brothers seemed to love him, wondering if it was ever real or always just performance? Does he pray for rescue? Or has the betrayal killed something in him that makes survival feel pointless? The psychological damage of this experience goes far beyond the physical trauma. Even when the fox eventually rescues him, even when he climbs out of that well and back into the light, a part of him never leaves that darkness. He's learned a lesson that can never be unlearned, that love is a lie, that family is a weapon, and that trust is just another word for vulnerability. When he finally emerges, he's not the same person who fell. That naive, trusting boy drowned in that well. What climbs out is something harder, colder, shaped by the understanding that the world is full of people who will smile at you while sharpening their knives. The brothers didn't just try to kill his body, they successfully murdered his ability to believe in human goodness. The story presents his survival as a happy twist, but it's actually the cruelest part of the tale. Death would have been mercy. Instead, he has to live with the knowledge of what his family is capable of, has to walk through a world where the people he loved most proved themselves capable of murder. He has to carry that well inside him forever, that cold, dark place where trust went to die. This is what fratricide really costs. Not just one life, but the destruction of everyone it touches, the corruption of everything it involves. The brothers may not have succeeded in killing their sibling's body, but they killed something far more precious, his soul. Let's talk about what it means to be the golden bird. You're a creature of the sky, born to ride currents of wind that humans can only dream about. Your existence is defined by movement, by freedom, by the rush of air beneath your wings. And then one day a human boy captures you and locks you in a cage barely large enough to spread your wings. The story treats this as a victory, but let's call it what it really is, the beginning of a living death. Every instinct in your body screams to fly, but there's nowhere to go. The golden bars that humans find so beautiful are the walls of your prison. You can see the sky through them, can watch other birds soar past, but you'll never join them again. This isn't just physical captivity, it's psychological torture. The bird doesn't lose the memory of flight. It remembers every sensation, every moment of freedom, and has to live with knowing it will never experience them again. That's not imprisonment. That's systematic breaking of the spirit through enforced helplessness. Humans feed it, care for it, keep it alive. But they don't do this out of compassion. They do it to preserve their investment, to maintain the beauty and value of their possession. The bird isn't a living creature to them. It's a golden asset that happens to breathe. Every moment of care is really just maintenance, like polishing a trophy or dusting a painting. The cruelest part is how the story presents the bird as somehow content with this arrangement. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't try to escape. It just accepts its cage as its new reality. But is that really acceptance, or is it learned helplessness? Has the bird simply given up because resistance is meaningless? Has it been broken so thoroughly that it can no longer conceive of freedom? Think about what it means to live that way. To wake up every day in a cage, to feel your wings ache with the need to fly, to watch the sky and know you'll never touch it again. To be admired for your beauty while dying inside. To exist solely as decoration for creatures who stole everything that made life worth living. The golden bird doesn't live in that cage. It dies there slowly over years, with its heart stopping long before its body gives out. The fox carries a horror that's even more profound than the bird's captivity. He knows exactly what he's lost because he used to be human. He remembers having hands instead of paws, speaking instead of growling, being treated as a person instead of an animal. And he's been living with that loss for so long that the memory of being human probably feels more like a dream than a reality. His curse isn't just transformation, it's conditional slavery. He can't break his own curse. He needs someone else to follow specific instructions perfectly, which means he's entirely dependent on the competence and compassion of strangers. He has no agency, no control over his own fate. His freedom exists only as a theoretical possibility that may never materialize. Consider the psychological impact of this existence. How many times has he helped someone before the youngest son? How many times has he guided people through their quests, only to have them fail at the final step, leaving him trapped for another decade or century? Every failure isn't just disappointment, it's the death of hope, the confirmation that he might be stuck like this forever. The fox's intelligence makes his suffering worse, not better. He's smart enough to understand his situation fully, to calculate the odds of escape, to feel every moment of degradation. When humans see him as just a clever animal, he feels the gap between what he is and what they perceive. He's a prince trapped in a beast's body, screaming inside a form that can't properly communicate his true nature. His servitude to the youngest son isn't friendship, it's transactional desperation. He helps because he has to, because it's the only path to freedom he has access to. Every piece of advice he gives, every danger he warns about, is motivated by self-interest disguised as loyalty. He doesn't care if the boy succeeds in his quest. He cares that the boy follows instructions well enough to break his curse. When he finally transforms back into human form, is it really a happy ending? He's regained his body. But what about his mind? He spent decades or centuries thinking like a fox, surviving like an animal, being treated as less than human. Can you really recover from that? Does he even remember how to be fully human? Or is he forever trapped between two states belonging fully to neither? The most disturbing element is what his curse reveals about magical justice in this world. His transformation wasn't random. It was punishment for something, though the story never specifies what. Which means there's a system of magical law that can strip away your humanity, trap you in a subservient form, and force you to earn back what should never have been taken in the first place. That's not justice. That's institutionalized torture. Now we come to perhaps the most horrifying victim in the entire story. The princess who has been so thoroughly objectified that she barely registers as human anymore. She exists in the narrative solely as a prize, a beautiful possession to be won, stolen, and traded between men who never once ask what she wants. Let's trace her existence. She's described as belonging to whoever owns the golden horse, which means her entire identity is tied to a piece of property. She's not a person with rights. She's an accessory, a bonus item that comes with a more valuable purchase. Her humanity has been so completely erased that even the narrative treats her like a collectible. When the youngest son first sees her, does he fall in love with a person or an idea? Does he know anything about her personality, her thoughts, her dreams? Or does he just see the most beautiful woman he's ever encountered and decide he must possess her? The story presents this as romance, but strip away the fairy tale language, and it's actually describing a man's decision to acquire a woman he knows nothing about because she's aesthetically pleasing. The princess's attachment to the golden horse reveals something heartbreaking. In a life where she has no control, no agency, no voice, the horse is the one constant. It's possibly the only being in her life that she has any relationship with. When she's forced to part with it, she's losing her last connection to anything familiar. She's being stripped even of her emotional support as she's transferred to a new owner. Her sadness about losing the horse is the only emotion the story allows her to express. Not fear about her future, not grief about leaving her home, not anger about being treated as property, just sadness about a horse. This reveals how thoroughly she's been conditioned to accept her objectification. She's allowed to care about things, but not about her own autonomy or freedom. The story's ending compounds the horror. She marries the youngest son and presumably lives happily ever after. But what does that actually mean? She's gone from one cage to another, from one owner to another, from being a prize in her old life to being a trophy in her new one. The only thing that's changed is which man's shelf she sits on. Nobody asks if she wants this marriage. Nobody asks if she's happy with the youngest son. Her consent is simply assumed based on the fact that she doesn't actively resist. But can someone who's been treated as property their entire life even conceive of refusing? Does she have the psychological framework to say no when she's been taught her entire life that her purpose is to be possessed? The princess represents the ultimate horror of the story. A human being so systematically dehumanized that both the other characters and the narrative itself forget she's a person. She walks, talks, and feels, but everyone treats her like an expensive vase that happens to be alive. And the most disturbing part is that she seems to have accepted this as normal, as the only existence available to her. This is what complete objectification looks like. Not just being treated as an object, but being broken down so thoroughly that you start to believe that's all you are. The princess isn't just a victim of others' cruelty. She's a victim of a system that convinced her she isn't fully human, that her worth lies solely in her beauty and her availability to be owned. That's not a fairy tale ending. That's a horror story about the death of the self. So here we are at the end, staring at what the golden bird really is. Not a fairy tale, but a catalog of human cruelty disguised as children's entertainment. It's a story about how ordinary people become monsters, how love curdles into hatred, and how society teaches us to celebrate the collection of broken souls as achievement. The youngest son doesn't win at the end of this story. He survives, which isn't the same thing. He climbs out of that well carrying the weight of his family's betrayal, knowing he can never unknow what they're capable of. He gets the princess, the bird, the horse, and his father's approval. And every single one of them is a reminder of what he had to become to survive. Because here's the truth the story won't tell you. To win this game, he had to play by its rules. He had to become the kind of person who captures sentient beings and locks them in cages. He had to accept that the princess is a prize to be won rather than a person to be known. He had to participate in the same system that nearly killed him, perpetuating the cycle of objectification and control that defines this nightmare world. The golden bird, the fox, the princess, they're not characters in a story. They're warnings about what happens when society normalizes the breaking of others. Each one started as something whole, something free, something complete in themselves. And each one was systematically destroyed by people who saw them as objects to be acquired, used, and displayed. This is the real horror of fairy tales. Not the wolves or witches or dragons. It's the casual cruelty of ordinary people. It's fathers who sacrifice their children for gold. It's brothers who become murderers over jealousy. It's the transformation of living beings into trophies, of people into property, of souls into collectibles. The Brothers Grimm didn't write this story to entertain children. They wrote it to prepare them for a world where family will betray you, where love is conditional, where your worth is measured by what you can provide to others. They wrote it to teach kids that the monsters aren't hiding under beds or in forests. They're sitting at the dinner table sharing your blood, calling themselves your family. The well at the center of this story isn't just a place where the youngest brother nearly died. It's a metaphor for the darkness inside every person who chooses cruelty when kindness is harder. It's the abyss we all carry inside us, the potential for betrayal and violence that civilization barely keeps in check. And the scariest part is knowing that under the right circumstances, with the right pressures, any of us could push our brother into that well. The golden bird remains trapped in its cage long after the story ends. The princess continues her existence as a beautiful object passed between owners. The fox may have regained his human form, but he'll never fully recover from centuries of being treated as less than human. and the youngest son carries the cold water of that well in his heart forever, a permanent reminder that the people who claim to love you are often the ones sharpening the knives. This isn't a story with a moral. It's a documentary of human nature at its worst, dressed up with enough magic and wonder that we do not notice we're looking at ourselves in the mirror. And the scariest part? We keep telling these stories to our children, passing down these lessons about betrayal and objectification and conditional love, generation after generation, pretending we're teaching them about good versus evil, when we're really teaching them how to survive in a world where everyone's a monster wearing a familiar face. That darkness hits different when you really look at it, doesn't it? When you strip away the magic and the fantasy and see what these stories are actually teaching us about human nature, about family, about the price we pay for survival in a world that values objects over souls. These aren't just old stories. They're blueprints for the cruelty we see every day, the normalized violence we've learned to accept, the casual destruction of others we've been taught to celebrate as success. The golden bird is every person who's been reduced to their usefulness, every soul trapped in circumstances they can't escape, every victim told to be grateful for their cage because at least it's golden. What other fairy tales are hiding these truths in plain sight? What other childhood stories have we accepted without questioning the darkness at their core? Drop a comment and tell us which tale you want us to dissect next. Which story taught you lessons you're still trying to unlearn? Subscribe to Shadowverse if you want more of these deep dives into the horror we call entertainment. We're here to drag everything into the light, to expose the rot beneath the pretty surface, to remind you that monsters are real, and they've been hiding in our stories all along. Hit that notification bell, because once you start seeing these patterns, you can't unsee them. And honestly, you shouldn't. We need to know what we're really teaching, what we're really learning, what we're really perpetuating every time we call these nightmares fairy tales. Until next time, remember, the well is waiting for all of us. The only question is whether we'll be the one pushed in or the one doing the pushing. Sweet dreams.